G'day, ZiggyD here with a bit of a Hearthstone guide. Today I just want to talk about the idea of control in Hearthstone. This applies to both just control in-game, controlling the game and board control and things like that, but also control decks and the control playstyle, the archetype, the deck archetype that's very popular through many different CCGs and TCGs, not just Hearthstone. I personally really like playing control games and control decks. Sometimes I value board control and things like that a little bit too much, but for the most part, it sees me to reasonable success in Hearthstone. So, let's talk first about board control and just control in the game. This game that I have going on in the background is just a Shaman game I played in Arena, so it's just got a random Arena deck, and yet it shows off a pretty good example of board control, trading efficiently with other minions and things like that, maintaining board control and then taking advantage of that board control. You'll notice at the end of the game, after I've had board control for quite a while, and I use that board control to get myself out a questing adventurer, and then I use that board control to be able to buff that card freely and eventually go for the kill. And this is essentially what control is about in Hearthstone. So let's first just talk a bit about just the idea of controlling the board. So, in a typical game of Hearthstone, you're going to get a hand of cards. You're going to get these cards. And a good way of maintaining control, essentially, is to counter your opponent's moves, to look at the cards in your hand and select the right answers to the things they're posing. Now, that's the first kind of control. So basically, if they're throwing out a bunch of minions in the early game, maybe they're going for a Murloc rush, a good way to control that game is to make sure that you have some board clears in your deck. So something like Lightning Storm in the Shaman deck, which does 2 to 3 damage across all of the board, will clear out the enemy's minions, and that'll keep you in control of the game. It means you have a really good answer to their strategy, and you can maintain control. Now, the next method of control, getting control and maintaining control, is of course through taunt cards. Typically, you want to be going for the most cost-efficient taunt cards possible. Some good examples of these are the Iron Fur Grizzly, which is a 3/3, and the Senjin Shieldmaster, which is 3/5. Both of these are very cheap taunt cards, and they deal really well with a lot of other minions. So basically, a good cost-efficient taunt card is going to be cheap on mana, have good stats for that mana cost, but most importantly, it's going to trade well with other minions, because maintaining control is often about trading more efficiently your cards with your opponent's cards. So for example, if I throw down a Senjin Shieldmaster and he has some low cost, low life minions on the board, like maybe he's put down 3 cards and gotten 3 different Murlocs down, the Senjin Shieldmaster will easily be able to clean up 3 of those cards, and then you're trading essentially 1 card for 3 cards, and that's an excellent way to maintain control and secure yourself a long-term victory. But that's not all that this taunt does. These taunt cards also allow you to play a bunch of other stuff behind that taunt. So, essentially, people tend to throw down taunts, I think, in Hearthstone too early. They see they've got a taunt card, and even though there's no real reason to throw a taunt down, they'll just throw it down, because it gives you this kind of feeling of safety, this feeling of security. But in a control style deck or in a control play style, you only really want to use taunts when you actually have a reason to use it. So for example, I see a lot of newer players make the mistake where they'll be playing a game and they'll have 2 taunt cards in their hand. Maybe they have an Iron Fur Grizzly and maybe they have a Senjin Shieldmaster in their hand. These are both excellent cards to play, and they're both excellent taunts. However, playing both of them at the same time really doesn't achieve you much unless your opponent has a lot of minions in the board and you're trying to stop yourself from dying. So basically, you just want to play one of these guys, and you want to play the one that will trade most efficiently with what your opponent is playing at the moment or will be playing in the near future. So this will depend on the turn, how much mana you've got. Say if your opponent's going to have 3 mana on the next turn, or if they're going to have 5 mana on the next turn, that'll help you decide which one is the best to play. Maybe playing an Iron Fur Grizzly will only buy you 1 turn, whereas the Senjin Shieldmaster will buy you many turns of control, and that's the important thing about taunts. So, once you actually have one of these taunt cards up, or when you're about to put down one of these taunt cards, you want to think about, okay, I'm going to get control with this taunt card. What can I do with that control? And as I said in this game, I put a taunt card down, and I'm able to maintain control for quite a few turns with that, and I'm playing a questing adventurer behind that taunt card, using that board control to be able to buff up that questing adventurer, buff up that well. And that's essentially what a control deck is all about. It's going for that late game win. It's going for a defensive playstyle that allows you to get out those really big and powerful cards, or get some really nice buffs and combos up in the late game. And it's about maintaining control at the right moment up to that point. So the next thing I want to talk about in terms of control is passive defensive card draw. So essentially, card advantage is very important if you're playing a control style. You want to have all of the possible answers to all of the things that your opponent could be playing. So this might mean you need something like silence in your hand, you might need a board clear in your hand, you might need just a straight card removal, so like a straight damage card, and you might need 1 or 2 taunts, and then you might also need the combos and things like that you're going for. That's a lot of things, and if you want to have the answers to all of the possible questions that your opponent could ask of you, then you need some sort of card draw, and a lot of good control decks will have some form of defensive or passive card draw. So, for example, things like the Northshire Cleric in the Priest deck especially is a really good example of a passive defensive card draw card for, especially in control decks. And Priests play control very well. I think Priest is one of my favorite decks to play because it is a very control-oriented deck. They have a lot of late-game potential, but you need to be able to control the game up to that point. So that often means just trying to get some card draw in the early game. So maybe you'll even play a Northshire Cleric down on turn 1, and if, say, you're playing against a Paladin, if he plays any of his low damage minions, you can essentially get hurt with the Northshire Cleric, heal it, and get some card draws. And basically you want to maintain control as long as possible with that, and then maybe even seed control a little bit and just use that early game to get those card draws as much as possible. So that Northshire Cleric will take damage, you'll get your cards, you'll get all of the answers you need, maybe you'll even take a bit of damage on your hero, but then come turn 5 or 6 you can play down your taunt, you can remove the threats from your opponent's side of the board, and then start playing some of your big end game things. So that's kind of the essentials of the passive defensive card draw style, and playing that in combination with other control tenets. Hero damage prevention is another thing of control. It's not one I use too much, but it's things like, a really good example I think is freezing your opponent's minions. If your opponent has a lot of high threatening minions, you can buy yourself a turn, which might be what you need to be able to remove those cards next turn. So something like Frost Nova or any of the spells that freeze your opponent's enemy is a good way of delaying a turn to keep you control. It prevents your opponent from attacking, and that's what control is all about. Is stopping your opponent from being able to do the things and carry out their plans. So I think that's a pretty good example. Another one is with the rogue decks, using one like Sap that returns it to their hand. Next turn, if they want to get that card out again, they're going to have to play that card again. It's going to suffer from summoning sickness, and they're not going to be able to do anything. You're going to have control of the game. That's pretty cool stuff. And then, of course, as I've already mentioned, the next component of like a control deck or a control playstyle is having very powerful and expensive late game minions. So that could be a straight up powerful card, like a legendary card or something like that, or it could be like I use in this game, the questing adventurer that you play down, you buff up, or it could be you're in a paladin deck and you're just throwing down some normal minions, but you're buffing them up with some kings or something like that to get them really powerful. So this should give you a fairly good idea of whether you want to play a control style in Hearthstone, but if you're still a little bit unsure, I'll ask you these questions. Do you enjoy getting the chance to play expensive and powerful spells that you wouldn't be able to do if you're like playing a rush deck or something like that? If so, then control might be for you. How about maybe you like playing a slower game that lets you think more defensively and make more tactical decisions? That's especially the thing I like. If that's the case, then maybe control decks are for you as well. And then thirdly, do you take pleasure in really frustrating your opponents and making them rage quit? That's one of the most pleasing things for me about playing Priest, where you're constantly thwarting their plans and preventing them from doing the things they want to do, and then getting out your big kill move right at the end of the game. If so, then control might be for you. Anyway, hopefully you guys found this interesting. I'll probably talk a fair bit more about control in future arena runs and things like that, but it's a playstyle I really enjoy, and maybe it's one you enjoy too. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.